Hello friends, Heath Home here and welcome back to another Sunday Funday live stream. Pretty warm one here in Ibiza today. It is getting towards the end of July, beginning of August, so pretty typical for this time of year, but very humid. So if you're in similar conditions, stay cool. And I hope you enjoy today's live stream. So what am I going to be doing today? I'm going to be exploring a new music idea, something for the club that I could play in my DJ sets. Thinking minimal house, sort of tech house in style. Inspiration could be some artists like Trauma or Mihai Popoviciu. I'll explain what I'm doing along the way, so whether you're completely new to music production and Ableton Live or you're a seasoned pro, I'm sure there'll be some key takeaways for everyone in today's stream. In the end, the goal, as always, is to inspire you to boot up Ableton Live and go and make some music. Feel free, of course, to drop any questions you might have in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer them as we go along. And without further ado, let's dive in. So let's do a quick little test. Hopefully already we have a microphone working. Let's just check we have some audio output as well. Seems that we do. Okay, so if anyone is already in the chat and you've heard both the microphone and music, do give us the thumbs up or let us know. Or as you jump in, if you can let me know, that would be great. All right, so we don't need that track that was playing there. That was just purely a demonstration, just to fire up some audio. We're going to, as we do on this channel, start from zero with a brand new idea in real time. So I'm thinking today, as I said, to do sort of something minimal house and tech. We might begin with the drums, or we might sort of get a drum loop going and then sort of build up our own drum kits. Also, I kind of have in mind today to use, I've been doing a little bit of sample sifting, finding some ideas for some samples today. So actually what I might do as well is break from how I normally work, which is generally always my default is in the session view here. And today I might actually start in the arrangement view, as sometimes I do go over there and begin a track, particularly if I was working on an a cappella or I have a vocal or something in mind that I want to sort of chop up or build perhaps the song idea around it. It may be a little bit easier to do that in the arrangement view, that is to loop it up, chop up the vocal and work on it and be able to see the waveform and things like that. So, you know, just to keep that in mind, I work with a lot of people whose default is the arrangement view. I think I would encourage that that isn't the case, and that you learn how to use the session view, as it's kind of like one of the main weapons of Ableton Live, if not the main weapon that sets it apart from Bitwig. And now I think Bitwig is the only, other DAW that kind of has a matching workflow and a little few differences, and maybe Logic are heading in the direction of the session view, which is interesting. All right, so let's jump over to the arrangement view. I also thought to do something today which is going to be not so heavy on the MIDI music theory, playing keyboards aspect. So if you're kind of beginner to, let's say not advanced, but somewhere in the middle there, or you're perhaps kind of working with a lot of audio, this hopefully could give you perhaps a bit of inspiration of how you can kind of take some audio from sample packs and things like that and kind of start to use it with a bit more creativity and imagination. Warwick Cole, sounding perfect, mate. Thank you very much for letting me know. That's great to hear that. So I dragged some audio tracks up to the top, as that's going to be the sort of key focus for the moment. So let's say we do my idea of having a bit of a placeholder of some drums. Let's get some of the other things going, and then we're going to strip away and make our own drum kits, because sometimes, you know, you might just drop in a loop and that might just get us going, and then we can sort of worry about, because I think I wouldn't personally use a full drum loop and just leave it there. I'd like to sort of make that myself, but if I start doing that now, it's probably quite boring if you're just, you know, tuning in and watching me drop in a kick, clap, hi-hats, snares, etc. But I will be doing that, but let's get going first. So let's go to, I think, my own sample library. I've got a little pack here from one of the maestros, I guess, of tech house or house music, Flash Mob from Italy. And he's got some sort of nice drum loops in this pack. So let's say we go down into the TR8 ones, have a little listen. Some of them are stripped and some of them full with the kick. I'd like one with a kick. Doesn't have to be too busy. So there's a pretty classic kind of housey type groove there. Lots to choose from. Yeah, this one kind of seems to work for my ear just as a simple kind of starting point. Let me just check in case there's a better one. This one's also a possibility. Just trying to keep it not too full. Okay, that one also could work. Let's loop up the first one I dragged in. Yeah, I think I'll stick with the first one. As I said, don't want it too busy for now. It does have a little bit of a few double kicks in there, but as I said, it's just a placeholder for now. Let's loop it up to 8 bars. So we want to stretch it out here. As I said, we are in the arrangement view today for a moment. Okay, so we've got a bit of a drum groove, and as I said, this is kind of a placeholder. Hi, Chavi Diaz. Hope you're well. Buenas tardes. This is just a placeholder. Like I said, nothing wrong with dragging in anything from sample pack just to get us going. In a moment, I'm going to program my own drums, but as I said, I'm not going to start with you watching me do that. Let's get into something a little bit more interesting. So we've got a drum beat. Let's set up on audio track 2 a bit of an effect. Let's grab ourselves the auto filter and let's dial it right down. So I'm going to show you in a moment. What I'm going to be looking for is a loop here that I can kind of turn into the bass line. A real classic technique is to go and grab things like disco loops and really high pass or high cut them like this and really get them into just the lows. And you can find that because of the way the disco loop might be made up, it might be live guitars and certain sounds in it, you could get a really interesting program loop that then becomes your bass line, right? So kind of that idea, but in this case, I'm not going to grab a disco loop. I'm going to try something else, but something else that's programmed that I can kind of use as a bass line. That's the idea. So what I'm thinking is to head to the packs of Ableton. Let's do a Command F on Mac here to have an all search, and let's look for some percussion. Okay, let's even just say perk and see what comes up. And let's filter it to a loop. And let's have a flick through here. Okay, this could already be perhaps interesting. So let's just drag that over. And of course, if the filter's off and we loop everything up, this is going to be a bit of a mess. Let's also make sure our volumes come down a bit. So obviously when I'm used to working over here, one of the first things I would do is get my volumes down a bit. Doesn't have to be as loud. Okay, so at the moment that loop, obviously we can move the volumes over here as well if we wish, but that was just to remind myself that I do like to do that over here. So if I put on my auto filter, it's okay, but I was kind of thinking something a little bit more minimal. And bear in mind, as I said, I want to try and teach you here how we can kind of use this, but we still want to kind of not swamp the drum loop that we've got there. We want to find something that we can use as a bass line. So what we can kind of do is this auto filter is going to stay. We can also open up, double click to bring the percussion down here in the waveform view. And then in kind of real time, we can switch out this sample if we like. So we could kind of be going along here. Let's preview a few more. Okay, so this one, as you can see, I'm just going to drag it down into this space here. It's more minimal. So the reason I didn't choose the first one is it was very, very busy loop, and therefore our drum groove up here, as we've got a full loop up here, it already has kick, clap. Like if we listen to that, what sort of do we hear inside here? I can hear at least 4 sounds already. I can hear a kick, I can hear a clap, I can hear like a rim shot and an open hi-hat. So it's busy enough already. So I'm kind of thinking a bass line that works around that drum groove, right? So this one looks like there's a lot more space in the percussion loop to do that. That's exactly kind of what I'm looking for, right? So what we could also do is come over to our percussion, and if it's not low enough already, we could pitch it lower over here on the sample. But this sample loop was already kind of low, but we could pitch it down a bit. So there we go. As quick as that, we could have a bass line from percussion just like that, pitching it down, filtering it down. So if we knock off the filter, big difference, right? And that's not what we're looking for in this case. We're trying to use that lovely programming of the percussion to give us a really nice bass line. And there'd be a reason for it kind of being an interesting idea, the same as disco loops and things like that, is because it's syncopating with the main beats of the drum loop. So this is a kick drum, 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 and we've got our bass working in syncopation with those kicks just by having a nice perk loop, percussion loop that's programmed to go in between, right? So that's working already off the gate. Really nicely. So let's say that's A. Let's pop that over here and see if there's something else. Even this one, let's say we just loop that up. I think I prefer the first one, but this is the point. And like I showed you a moment ago, actually if I put that back and I double click and open, you can switch these in real time. So you could actually just be doing this. This could also make an interesting bass line, but it needs a little bit pitching down. Okay, let's carry on. Another one could work quite well, so I'm going to pop that over, carry on. Sorry, I've made a mistake there. Let's make sure I swap the one out down here. Another one, right? And this isn't lazy, right? It's kind of thinking about something and making, you know, something out of something else that we're planning on making a bass line. We're not using it in its default percussion. I think we've already got enough options, but let's just reach the bottom of the percussion folder that we've got filtered here. And we can also just do this without having, as I said, in real time if we want, just to check in case there's... This one could be interesting as well. Okay. Oh, that one could be really interesting because it's got kind of a melody tone. Okay, not as good as I thought it might be. Okay. Another one. That's a good one as well, right? So I think that will do for now. Otherwise, we could spend all day doing that. The nice thing is, you know, perhaps you're also seeing something new that you can open, like an audio clip, and just keep switching it to other audio clips down here in the bottom. You can just keep replacing it. And if you're sort of careful where you drag it, I was leaving my -12 one octave lower tuning as well whilst I was doing that. I wasn't scrubbing and resetting, so everything that was being dragged into the bottom down here was with the filter either on or off and with the pitch down, right? So if we put this loop in, and this was our choice, we could open the filter up a bit. I do really like that one. It's a lot busier though than some of the others. Probably not going to go for that one. That's also pretty cool. I think actually this one I'm going to mark to use as percussion because I kind of like the little fill that's going on in some of there, so we'll keep that, but not for the bass line. That grooves, really grooves that. This one I think is out. Yeah, that would be a similar down here, not for the bass line. That one I think I'm going to bin. So it's out of these two for my bass line. I mean, that just grooves. Straight off the bat. So this is a really nice B. Danny Bola, that one, the jacked perk is nice. Which one? Down here. Well, I moved the jack perk away because I think I'd like to use that one personally as a percussion, but I like the little sort of fills and things in it. But as a bass line, it wasn't kind of grooving the same way these two are for me. What I do want to show you though is that out of these two, this one definitely grooves off the gate for me. This one, if I was going to use this one, so let's sort of color them up a bit. And we'll say this one here, well, they do have their names, so we can leave their names as we can name them by box or force. So this one, the thing that I would do with it, which again, I'm sort of teaching you some tips and tricks here, is that with the drum loop that we've already got, there's a lot of clashes in this loop and they're not necessary. We're trying to make this percussion loop into our bass line. And so if we leave a lot of the hits that are happening here alone, they're weakening the drum groove, right? So really the tip here is to turn on envelopes in this loop, and we go down here, clip and choose the gain, and all of the locations where the kick drums are, I would take them away like so. So now we're removing the same location of this bass line. Sorry, I'll just go back. I want to just copy through here in a moment. So we're removing where the kick drum is in this loop, and you can copy and paste like that. So that we're leaving space, because it's actually just the hits in between of this percussion loop that would give us, again, that really nice syncopated bass feeling, right? And it's pretty simple to do that. And if you look in here and there's anything that's not quite right, then you can zoom right in and make sure you're not creating any pops and clicks or anything like that on the parts where you've cut away. So the blue sections are what we hear. The area of gray now has been removed from that. So if we listen to this, it sounds like this. And if that's a bit quiet, it might well be because we're very low on the master. So what I'll just do for a moment is I'll just pop a limiter on there just for while I'm working with quieter samples, and we'll just have a bit of a boost. Hopefully I'll remember to take that away later. That's pretty smooth. I wouldn't worry too much about, I'm not really hearing any pops and clicks. If you are, you can always click away, like one of the points at the top here, hover below the line here, hold down Option key on your keyboard, and you can smooth out those with curves. And again, as I said, you can zoom right in and move things around so that you're removing pops and clicks yourself. So that's what I would do straight out the gate with this bass line here. If we wanted to do something a little bit more interesting to it, we could also pick on a note that we're leaving behind. We stay in the clip, but we're going to choose transposition. And on one of these, we could turn on our pencil tool. We're going to pitch up this note. Right, so we could create little new repitches if we wished. We can also go down. Right, so you can make your own musical loop as well, if you like, out of the transposition. I'm going to leave that. I'm quite happy with just a simple kind of muted bass line. But if I'm looking for a variation, if that was the one I chose as the final bass, then as you can see, I could copy it over and start doing that, and that could be the B to the A, right? So we would have a move from this particular loop here, which we could say is our A, and the next one could be the B, and we might do some of those repitches in the B loop, right? We might also open up one of those other notes that I muted, if we like. It would change the groove. So in the B loop, over here, different color, that one, we could have that transposition, or we could go back also to the volume and maybe we put in one of these. I think that would work, but towards the end here. But the most successful in here would be, for a variation, a repitch. So now we've got that nice little high note there. And away we go, right? So simple way to make an A and a B clip there. Nice. We could also copy another one over and flip it. Let's reverse it. Watch out when you reverse it. Of course, the envelopes kind of need readjusting because they're no longer in the right place. They were kind of on one of the notes that I'd muted with the gains, and probably similarly, if we go into the gain, well, we are in the right location there, but we do need to make sure like that our envelopes, when we flip it, are taking away what we want to take it away. So there's some ideas there, right? For, you know, something creative, percussion loop, now a bass line, few different variations. What is key? Taking away drum hits that parts of the percussion loop that are clashing with our drum groove, And if you can program that into your music production workflow and you're using lots of audio loops, that will change the game, because you are deciding which hits play at which certain time. So if you've got 30 percussion loops all playing at the same time, guaranteed there are many, many clashes. And if you remove the clashes and just highlight the sounds you want to happen at that point in time, then it will all mix better, sound better, and work better. I meet so many people and listen to their tracks where there's just way too much stuff. It's all clashing with each other, and this is a big issue. You've just got all these audio loops you put together. You think they kind of sound okay, but if you start going down and taking them all out one at a time, if I can't hear it, then it doesn't need to be there. If it is there, you need to make me be able to hear it, and that would be doing something like this, removing all the clashes. So if we go back to our other bass loop that we have here, the one I think I'll probably use, it's already more open, right? And so that was kind of what drew me to it. It grooves really nicely and it's more open. By that, if we look at the clashes and we know that where our kick drums live, they are here on the strong beats, we've got space in this bass line, which is why I kind of love it. It's something, again, that I'm aware of right from the start, that I could use that, and I know there's not really any clash. I've got more control over it. The other one we've made it work, but it needs a little bit more thought. This one, not so much. And again, how much we repitch it on the actual clip, that's up to us. At the moment it's 7 semitones lower. So if you want a really low nasty bass, you can go even lower. Just doing that by ear. I'm also going to change it from beats to, say, complex or tones. Let's try tones first. I think complex is okay. And then if we were to play around with the filter during the track, we could automate this a bit. Nice. So there we go. We've got our bass line going with our drums, just like that. Let's drag it out a bit. Let's just do a bit of housekeeping here. Let's also maybe just add a slight little bit of processing on there, so we could adjust the kind of, let's say, grit in it if we wish. Before the filter, we could have a little bit of raw. Okay, so watch out for that. I was on the wrong track as I clicked previously elsewhere, so let's put that on the right track. Better. One other thing I'd probably check a little bit would be something like, if you are just thinking a little bit ahead for mixing, you know, is this percussion really wide? It does sound a bit wide in my ears, but it's not, I think, too crazy. But if you have something like a little isotope ozone imager, we can check here kind of what it's doing, checking the meters a little bit. And so what we could do is maybe just make it, put a utility here as well. And again, it can be before the filter, and I'm just going to bring the width knob down a little bit, back into mono a little bit. If it's all the way here, it's fully mono. We can have a little bit. Somewhere here. So we've just kind of made it a little bit more narrower, no phasing, sitting up at the top of the meter nicely. Okay, round one, bass line, out of percussion, looped up with our drum pattern. Okay, so let's say we go into the sample pack and look for something else, maybe something musical, or before that, perhaps I'll get one of my audio samples in, my idea. Sorry, Danny boy, by the way, that I didn't choose the loop that you wished, but as I said, I'd kind of bookmark that one for a percussion idea. So what have we got here? I think it's this one that I thought about using. So I'm just going to drag it straight in. By the way, our project tempo, we're at 125. That happened by the very first drum groove that I dropped in. So maybe I'm just going to knock it down 124, maybe go 126. We'll see in a moment. So let's bring in this kind of sample that I have here. Let's see where it starts, over here somewhere. It's a spoken word, so kind of I quite personally am drawn to spoken words, but you know, at the moment I might not be using a whole big chunk of the vocal. I'm kind of looking for little parts of it that I could use, just like little voices or sounds that I can turn into a bit of a loop. Yeah. Sort of like that material. So let's say we turn on warping on the vocal, we turn it into complex or complex pro. We can loop it, because what I kind of want to do is make a small loop in here, just of a couple of beats, something like that. Then I'm going to move around a bit, see if I can find something interesting that could make a nice little kind of loop layer. So there's a couple of ideas already. So we could have it looped like that. Another option would be, if we copied this down, we could just isolate one of these. By that I mean chop it out a little bit, so we make more of a groove out of it. We place it in our drums, in between the bass and the drum, sort of somewhere. So if we loop up this bar here, well, let's say we do 2 bars. Turn off the first one. Let's try another position. So maybe we use it like that to start with, and then in the second, so let's say this is the first 2 bars, let's make a 4-bar loop, and in the second one over here, maybe we reverse one of these, and again, maybe we reveal, Danny boy, no worries, is good for later perks. Anyway, yeah, in the end, maybe one day I'll let you guys take in the pilot's chair, but I appreciate it. As I said, it's nice to have this engagement, and yeah, I kind of, as I said, hopefully showed you how we could use the other loop, but yeah, it sounded like, it's interesting, like if we put it, so where is it gone? It's down here. Definitely could be the bass line, right? So if we bring it over, it's just got a bit of a different rhythm, right? So it's kind of cool, but it was quite different. So if we pop that in, that's down here. I do like it. So it's another track, right? Absolutely. You know, it's just a different feel to it. The other one sort of just kind of has me moving a little bit more, as I said, out the gate. And I kind of like this one for the little sort of tighter, glitchier parts of it. And I was thinking to sort of place them around a little bit like I'm doing with the vocal here, kind of similar idea. That's what I had in my head. But good call. Like I said, all of them worked. That's why they were sort of A, B, C, or D. But yeah, in the end, we have to commit somehow. And who knows, maybe we come back and next time that's in there instead. All right, so I'm going to flip this one over here. So again, you know, when you flip stuff, as you'll notice, kind of just make sure, again, the envelope is kind of coming back in and the reverse sound is looped up the way you want it to be looped. So we might even put that, like, you know, right over and butt it up against the end of the loop sort of thing. And we could try with the now reversed little vocal one shot, we could grab the front of it here, and if we hold down shift, we can stretch it, right? So we can kind of stretch it for the whole bar, and we're going to get this really sort of glitchy kind of FX feel. Let's just see what that sounds like. Maybe we save that, we use it now, or we save that for like transitions in the arrangement sort of thing. Yeah, so that's probably what I would do with that. So I'd kind of remind myself, I could even like, let's say, just go backwards till I've got that there. Went too far. On my Command Z. See if we can get it back there. There we go. All right, so let's just copy one there with those outside the loop. As I said, easy to do again, but just reminds me what I was thinking, right? So now I've kind of lost my Command Z a little bit, so I'll just quickly redo this. All right, so I think we're back where we were. Again, don't be afraid to kind of move these around, try out some different timings. You know, is it a bit predictable there? Would it be more interesting sort of somewhere else? That could be interesting, for example. I think also it's crying out for a bit of a delay on it. So let's say that we do a couple of things. We add some processing to this little vocal idea in here. Let's say we add, so first of all, I've kind of got, yep, Complex Pro on. I haven't repitched the sound, it's staying at the same pitch, but that once you split also, we've got all this beautiful possibilities of repitching it, reversing it. It's its own little clip. This is independent to this. And yeah, we've just created something, you know, interesting, right? That we can use in many ways. So let's, pink is for vocals for me. So let's turn it pink. Let's say my bass line is normally kind of red. So let's do that. Okay, and normally a kick drum would be red, but I'll just leave that a funny color for now because it's just a placeholder. Right, so what was I thinking? I was thinking kind of a couple of things. Have a look. We'll just do a little bit of work on the vocal, nothing too crazy. Let's have an EQ, an auto filter, and I can kind of hear a delay or an echo that just kind of switches on somewhere on it. Sure, am I delaying after the filter or before? I'm not sure yet. All right, so let's say we loop around the vocal. So just do a quick little EQ on it. It needs a bit of cleaning. You can get all that bass out that doesn't need to be there. Size so we don't go crazy listening to that badly looped audio. something like there's already improving where it's sitting in the mix. All right, filter. I'd quite like it to do this a bit. So maybe to show you what I'm thinking, I'll use an external LFO, but we've got the built-in LFO here, which would do the same thing as I'm thinking, where I can automate or add an LFO to move the filter frequency of this vocal. So it kind of goes in and out by itself. But if I do it with an LFO audio effect, you'll be able to see kind of what I had in my head. Because when you do it here, we don't get any visual clue of what actually is going on, right? So if you add an LFO here, you are adding an LFO amount to the frequency. Here's the shape. So that's the shape of the LFO movement, the rate, whether it's note synced or beat synced or not. You know, so it is happening, but obviously visually you don't see what's going on. And we've probably in the new LFO of 12, this is Ableton 12 by the way, Ableton Live 12, we've got a few more options here where we can add some pretty funky kind of wild LFO shapes as well that we wouldn't have in here. We've just got the basics. We've got a square, triangle, sawtooth, up and down, a random, two types, or bin and random, let's say. So here we've got a few more little options down here. Stray, glider, they're new in 12. So let's say we map that to the frequency. We don't want anything too crazy, just a little bit of variation. Just make it a bit more interesting because it's not always the same, right, when it passes by. And if we want it more randomized than a sine wave, if we do go into these, then what's happening every time is completely different, right? Each time it filters, and if we want that more, you know, extreme, then we can go back up again. So the choice is yours on that kind of thing. Do you want like the movement of this filter frequency to be really random, or do we want it to sort of be sort of moving but in a bit of a more predictable way? But it's still got movement to it now. That's kind of interesting. All right. And then on this hit, I think I'd like to just automate maybe a delay on. Like that. Maybe not, we don't need as much ping pong as that. Let's try also on this reverse one. Let's see if we do pitch it down. What does it sound like if we, let's try an octave down. That would be really low, probably too low. Just so it's a little bit different to the other one. Could also delay it, but I think it's probably nice to kind of keep it a little bit different. So we've got that kind of pattern. Again, maybe with the reverse one, we don't have it until later. And this is something else to think about. Don't sort of, you don't need to kind of get crazy busy at this point. We're just trying to build up an interesting kind of what we've got here, which is an 8-bar loop. So maybe we repeat this again, but we don't repeat the reverse. It just happens once in the end of the 8 bars, and this one here maybe repeats twice, right? Little ideas like that, and that could evolve over time as well. It could be something that doesn't happen straight away, but in the arrangement later, you make it get a little bit busier as time goes on. Yeah, I'm not sold on the reverse. So the other thing I might do is make it quieter as well. But I'm just going to take it out for the moment. It's one, let's put it over here as our, maybe we might use them. And then in that clip, I would go down and I might just make it a little bit softer inside. Put it in the bank, we might use it later, but I don't think it needs to be part of this initial loop idea that we've got rolling here. All right. So now I can take that one away. All right, so got a couple of copies of that vocal. So this one can go, it's just the chop. This one, we can maybe loop back out to the full original, just somewhere around here. So we might go in there looking for some nuggets again in a bit. Let's see. But it's a nice kind of spoken word, but I was looking for just something, a little phrase like that I can take out and use in a certain way. Hi, Lauren, how are you doing? I was going to say bonsoir, but it's still bonjour. So I hope you're doing well, Lauren. Nice to see you here in the live stream. All right, so here we are with our basic loop. What else are we going to be looking for next? So we've got these percussions down here, extra bass lines. Let's bring those percussions up. They're going to become part of the groove. We've got this vocal. I had another vocal that I might steal something else from. Let's try that. Similar, just looking for a bit of a sort of more FX-y part than actually everything in the vocal. So again, just looking for sort of something a little bit textury, a little bit something that I can maybe use. So let's say we warp it, Complex Pro, loop it. And let's get in here and again make a nice small loop, see what we can find. Kinda, that's the sort of thing I was actually thinking.
What up? Philly.
That's nice. So let's say we chop that out of the sample. We're just going to use this as like a little bit of an atmosphere kind of loop in the bottom. And here we are going to right click crop. Turn it up. Again, a little bit of processing. Move this mud down the bottom here away. Let's get in here. Let's try actually putting this one in beats for a second. Changing the preserved transients to 16ths. Give it that little kind of tremolo-ish feel, or gated feel. Let's do 2 copies. Let's pitch this one down. Try one of these as well. I think it might work in reverse. The answer is it doesn't work. Nothing wrong with trying, and that's the thing you kind of do when you're being creative, right? Try stuff out. If it works, great. If it doesn't, in it and move on. So let's have a bit of reverb on this one. Pop over the session view for a sec, have a look at how our levels are, if there's any panning opportunities, or any samples a bit louder on one side than the other. Not so much. All right, so let's go dig in for something else. Let's go and try something else. Let's say, again, we're digging into audio today, digging into samples, reimagining things, trying to kind of, like, as I said, you know, to I think sometimes a logical progression when you're, particularly if you're starting with production, you might start with a lot of audio, one-shots and loops and samples. Hopefully this gives you a bit of inspiration of how you can kind of use Ableton Live and sample packs and audio, just start to stretch them into territory where they become your own. And that's sort of the holy grail, right? Is kind of Nothing wrong with audio loops or samples and things like that. In fact, they're great source material, right? But what we're trying to do is create on our computer here, ideally, is something that's unique to our workflow, unique to this project right here that no one else kind of currently has. The only thing we're using at the moment, which is out of the box as it was, is the drum loop at the top, but we're going to get rid of that as well at some point and make our own drums to go with what we've got. So I'm kind of tripping through my both the packs that come with Ableton Live and a little bit of my own library today, taking a look for sort of some inspiration here. So I think I've got something, let me try over here. Well, let's do a Command F. Let's ask it for disco. I don't think I've got a lot, no. So what happens if loop is off? Okay, so there's some new disco things down here. So that loop's kind of pretty cool. We don't have, the funny thing is, even though we've kind of got these vocals and a bass line, we don't have a lot of musical stuff at the moment. We didn't really set a key or a scale because I've not been playing anything in. I haven't been focusing on music theory, the keyboard. This is another good thing, right? At the moment, I'm just using my ear. So if you're a DJ or you're coming at this from like mixing a lot of records, perhaps you have a good ear and you can kind of hear when this sample goes together with this sample, right? So all of that pitching that I've been doing, if I've moved the pitch on anything so far, it's all been done just with the ear, trying to hear like, yeah, okay, that sounds nice with that. I haven't been saying it's got to fit in A minor, C major, anything like that. I like this loop here. And again, it actually just says chord loop 124. Doesn't really give me any key or scale, but I'm just going to drop it down there. That could be interesting. We could use that for sure. What else have we got here? So all of these sound good, right? But the lazy thing would be to just drop that in the track perhaps and just say job done with that organ loop. It does work, nothing wrong with that. If you can't program that or make it different, you could just say, okay, let's have that, loop it out, and we've got our musical part. But I'm going to do something else. Just looking for some inspiration. And remember I was talking about disco loops in the very beginning, if you were with me then and I made this bass line out of percussion. Well, you know, making loops out of disco, some of these you can hear there's already like a bit of a low bass guitar in them, but if there wasn't, we could do the same as I've done with this percussion up here. That is, drop those loops in, get a really high cut filter on them and pitch them down and turn them into a bass line is a great tip for coming up with kind of cool bass lines out of disco loops. Okay, so there's plenty of good stuff straight out the gate here. We're looking for something that we're going to take and turn into something else. So, I'm just going to use one of these for a second because what I want to know is actually what pack is this from, which sample folder is it from, let's say. Okay, so it's over here in this House Nation one. So I'm thinking I might use that. And just by the way, if I put this up here and we loop it, this disco loop, let's have a listen to what it sounds like. So for me, the cheat in that one is that there's already a bass guitar in it. So if I was doing it with a disco loop, I'd be looking for one that doesn't really have the bass guitar, and I'd be turning it down into that low loop, right? That's the idea behind it, is to have something where you're kind of like not already starting with a bass. You can if you want, but the idea here is we're kind of making a bass out of nothing. All right, so let's have a listen to what we've got in this folder over here of music loops. Giving ourselves some choices, so if you're still around, Danny boy, you might be able to help me out on this one. Cherry picking some ideas here. I've already got a few options, so I could again spend a long time going through there, but I think we've already got some candidates here that could work quite well. So what we're going to do, I think we've got some empty ones already here. There's an empty MIDI track there. We're going to bring that up to line up next, and we're going to open up that MIDI track, and we're going to drag in one of these loops and pop it into a simpler or a sampler, as we're going to work with it in its musical shape. So instead of just bringing this track up here, and as I said, looping up our music idea to go with what we have. Yeah, this is the one for me. It's a little bit like how I came up with the bass line with the percussion. This one for me, it kind of has the nice synth sound that kind of fits with what I have. In this case, as I said, we don't have established music yet. This is A sharp minor. That's what's in the sample. Danny boy, I like minimal stuff, so I would have gone for such things, but whatever you feel, I'm here for the support. All right, mate. Well, as I said, minimal. This is kind of like, yeah, you know, Trauma's doing stuff like this. I mean, obviously there's many overlaps with this kind of thing, but perhaps another day I'll do something that might be more minimal, more underground, let's say. This is going in a direction of a little leading towards house, but again, there's Chris Stussy, Mihai Popovicchio, Trauma. Those are the kind of guys, I guess, that inspire me a little bit today for the idea. Let's get our MIDI track open. We're going to drag this down. That means that Ableton's going to do a very nice thing for us and pop it into a simpler. So we've got the loop inside a sampler called the simpler. That's because Ableton has two samplers, the simpler and sampler, and the simpler is the, let's say, junior, or the little sister, little brother of the big brother, big sister, the sampler as it's called. We're going to move ourselves to one of the notes in here. We know it's A minor, so in theory, let's make our loop small. And I appreciate the support, Daddy boy, as well. Thank you. Hope you're finding it interesting either way and inspiring. That's gonna the idea here. So let's open up a MIDI clip, brand new MIDI clip here, and let's pop in a C. on C3 in the middle of the piano, because what we want to do is kind of check that it is A minor, and that what we ideally want is, if we were playing a keyboard or we are programming it, that when we play a C, we get a C actually matching, right, in the sample. So let's see if we get some information that's going to be helpful. Let's pop a tuner over here. Let's see what happens. Does it pick up this note? Do we see in the tuner that we've got a C3 in our MIDI clip? Do we see A sharp here? What are we seeing? And we need to switch this one off. Let's make our note longer. So we don't see anything on the tuner. Okay, we just see something there. Okay, here. So it's picking up a note there, right? It's just saying it's C sharp. Again, we got a little bit of a C sharp happening over here. Let's make our loop smaller. So in theory, we can go down one semitone and in a little bit till we're in the green. In the target there, and now we're getting a C when we're playing a C, right? That's the kind of idea here. Now, of course, moving around the sample, as you see, sometimes it takes a little bit of work. We weren't getting any sort of tone or note information, and sometimes you have to play around with that. You have to move around a little bit. You might even have to create like a little loop in here, make it really small, and see if Ableton kind of detects. But the good news is, I'm kind of happy. The other way we could check this, so if we don't have any information coming in the tuner, and that does happen, as I said, quite often, it's not to do with this particular sample, it's just to do with life and trying to use samplers and trying to get matching tune here, pitch here, with the note that we're playing in the MIDI clip. We can also drop an EQ in and use this display here to try and have a look at the fundamental note, or where we feel is the fundamental note, the loudest sort of spike in here, and what kind of note it's playing, or the lowest note. So again, we're getting more or less a C sharp around here, where I'm hovering down here. That's another way you can try, is to work around, and sometimes it might be an A minor, but that doesn't mean either that all the notes are playing on A, right? They can be playing from the notes within that scale. So the reason I did that is just that I want to kind of reprogram this loop to play different notes. So instead of dropping it on and using it like the audio loop down here, we're trying to replay it, because that sounds really nice. But we want to kind of come up with our own sequence perhaps, and by kind of getting the sampler to agree with, you know, matching the pitch here with the tuner or the EQ, trying to get it so that when we play a C in our MIDI clip or keyboard, that we're kind of getting a C out of the loop wherever we are in it. It's not a bad idea. Otherwise, again, you are relying on a very, very good ear. And perhaps, you know, when you're starting out, you can't hear whether it's in key with everything else that you've got going on. Again, the good thing was we didn't really have anything musically going on yet. Everything was kind of atonal slightly. That is, the percussion is a bass line, but it's not really in a certain key. And these vocal cuts and chops and things I've used, again, I've pitched them a little bit, but I wasn't saying they must fit in this key and this scale. So again, if we really wanted, we could obviously have our track in A sharp minor if we want, and then we would leave that sample alone and we put the MIDI note here then on A sharp, right? Which A sharp? That's an A sharp there. So now we'd be matching, right? In theory. But again, A sharp minor could be that it doesn't always just play the A sharp, it plays the other 7 possibilities in the scale, right? So I think we've got a good solution right now with what we have. And now I would sort of like, let's consolidate this a bit to a bigger loop. Let's get rid of that other C and let's try and come up with a little bit of a program, a little bit of a musical idea here. Sorry, I neglected the chat for a moment. Cheers, like watching others produce even other styles than I do, vaping some lemon and vibing. And finally, it's 5 o'clock here, so I can put it on speakers, was with headphone. Oh, nice. Nice one, Danny. You're probably thinking the guy's crazy. What was he doing leaving all that space there? Well, the reason I left a space after the first little pattern, even though it was thought to keep carrying it on, is I kind of think might be nice to make this synth play a conversation with another synth, right? So it's kind of doing its thing in that first bar, and then maybe something else is another instrument with another sound is contributing to the next bar, right? That's what I was kind of thinking. And if we move around in here now, you know, perhaps let's use this EQ while we're here. A bit of processing. Take control a bit of its envelope so we could make it more plucky if we want. Perhaps we open that and automate it so we could. Okay, so let's maybe try a couple of interesting sound designy type things. Which note are we using? We're using the last one here, right? So let's say we cut one of those out, just holding our Option key, sliding it over there. Let's flip it, reverse it. Nice. So we've got a little reverse one of the same note that's playing our little sequence now. And let's do something fun. Let's drop that into the hybrid reverb. If we can, we should be able to. Sometimes I find that. All right, let's move it sort of somewhere else, over here, and see if I can do it from there. Interesting. Yeah, I know I can add it. All right, let's try it this way. The reverb there. Don't want to let me do that. No, you don't want you to let me do that. Just try one thing. Bear with me. We will get this to work one way or another. There we go. Yeah, it was because it was kind of trying to see it as a much bigger sample than it was. So, you know, obviously you can't put huge long samples in here, I think. I'm not sure what the limit is off the top of my head, but, you know, just cropping the sample down helped a lot. And so I finally got the outcome that I was looking for. So I can bin that track off. Now we've got a reverse reverb between these notes of this, and the reverb is the hybrid reverb. So it's a impulse response that is taking of that reverse chord inside of the reverb. So let's see what that sounds like. It should be interesting. Not as successful as I thought it might be. Worth trying again. That's what we do when we're doing a bit of sound design. So we're going to go back. We don't need it. We're going to stick with just the lovely, luscious reverb that was there. All right, for the moment. What I might do though is make it a bit wonky, a bit more movement, either with a delay. We could have a bit of panning as well in here. Let's do it outside of the simpler. All right. Do we have something from our previous playing around with music to add in as this conversational piece? So this one we've now used. So again, maybe we'll drop that right down the bottom here. Sometimes I do that. I have a little track where I'm throwing things. I don't need that reverse piece. I've already used those. Is there something from one of these that we could have a conversation with the other? Let's see. Probably not that one, that's for sure. I think maybe this one, maybe. That would work, but we're going very sort of laid back kind of. It's a nice vibe, but maybe we'll go for something a little different sounding. All of these sound good, but I'm just going to test that sort of something like that. So we could go that kind of route. Well, let's see if we can find something else. So we're going to kind of make it a bit more, perhaps we'll see if there's a different direction we can head. I've got Danny Boy in my mind now, thinking it's a bit too fluffy. But yeah, as I said, these things come out as they come out in real time. So packs, where were we? What were we doing? Let's get on track here. We're in this folder here. Had a good dig around in the music loop folder. What else is there? What about in the synth loop folder? Is there something in there? Pasty. Yeah, so maybe a different direction away from this kind of house sound folder. Let's go back over to our Ableton Live, do a search, Command F, get back over here to the all category. By the way, I did do a video recently, you can pop it up here on 12.1, what's coming new in the very first update, and one of those is auto tagging, which is such a blessing, means all of our own samples are automatically tagged in with everything from Ableton Live. So if you make a selection up here, you no longer have to manually edit, tag, and connect Ableton to your own sounds. It will show up whenever you refine your search to that. So let's say we're having a little play. Well, that wasn't giving me a lot of options. Let's see if we've got something with some interesting, yeah, that's not a lot. Okay, let's change that to synth or something like that. Again, I'm very capable of, you know, popping in an instrument, making it from zero, all that kind of thing. But in this case, we're kind of playing around and doing something a little bit different, where we're looking for and showing you how you can use Ableton Live and samples and come up with using them in creative and imaginative ways. That's kind of the plan here. Modular patterns, what do we got here? This looks good. This kind of folder is already piquing my interest. That first loop was the possible one. Also that one. So it looks like we're going to have some gold in here. Not sure. ear straight away because it's a lot of space. By the way, if you're here in the stream with me, do say hi, introduce yourself, say hello to everybody else that's there. Let us know how you're doing. Let us know how your Sunday's going. How are things? Are you enjoying the stream? Are you finding it beneficial? If you are and you do enjoy the content on the channel, do consider giving the video a thumbs up, subscribing to the channel. Much appreciated. Just gonna have a sip of water while we're firing up these sounds. I'll have to be honest, I think I've already got stuff we can work with. We'll just be going down a bigger rabbit hole, but this looks like a good folder to maybe revisit. And the good news is, again, it's in Ableton's ecosystem. It's part of a pack, and the pack is the retro synths, samples, modular patterns. That's where we've ended up inside of there. So if you are an Ableton Live Suite owner, happy days, you can get your hands on this very same pack. So again, tempting to just drop these in and away we go, but we are thinking of how can we kind of make them our own a bit. So pink one, I reckon, was one that kind of really caught my ear. So being modular, the interesting thing was as well that there was no real key showing up for these either. So we're kind of working today in a fairly much structure where our ear is telling us pitch and does this work with this, etc. Although we do now have a scale going since we tuned the last sample to C, and we started this sort of either C major or A minor pattern, because why is it either of those? It's only white keys. And there are some other scales like D Dorian would also be white. So if we are up here and we filter it to A minor, those notes are all going to still be in that scale, so we're all good. We're just using only the root note once, whereas if it's C major, well, we had the root note really as the main part of the pattern, and then the other keys around it just to move to the second for a little bit, the D, and then down to the A, which is the sixth. So maybe we'll keep it in C major for now for simplicity. So if we just stick this down in audio, so interesting loop for sure. Same with that one. Also pretty cool. I can see I'm going to have a problem here trying to choose. Okay, that one's kind of jumped to my number one at the moment. So again, if you don't want to work with these in a sampler, we can work with them as they are. That's absolutely fine. No rules broken. But just be aware that when we open it up, much like we did with the percussion up here, and we paid attention as we've gone along, we might want to, you know, customize this a little bit so that there's some space, right? So that, you know, notes aren't playing over the top of each other. So maybe my original idea of just doing that, you know, so the conversation happening between the two parts is one already clearing the space between the musical parts, right? But you could also say that you prefer the sequence running a bit longer, and then you could do it over here in the arrangement view, so muting out parts with the 0 key, or you could go into the clip itself down here, which is probably would be my preference. Then you can kind of make a loop that has these changes and stretch it across. Just depends. If you're working in the session view, this would be much more important. In the arrangement view, we can just draw over the top, click 0 and mute those notes. But if we wanted, we could also, you know, take out all those notes with the gain here, have a few in the middle. There's a clash around here again, and then there's clashing notes here again, and also a little bit here. So we could kind of do this sort of thing. And let's have a listen to that. And we could now start writing our own pattern down here if we like, so we could reveal some. Don't really hear that, so that goes. And maybe we copy this. Sorry, didn't quite get that right. So listen to that just out of interest for a comparison. So this is the part that I've worked on, right? And this is the thing with the ear of doing this for a long time. This has more space. This sounds, to me, messy because there's a lot more clashes that are not taken away. And so, yeah, it's fuller, louder, busier loop, but it sounds like that to me. This already sounds better. So we have a comparison here. In terms of space, great. So I would be not doing that. I would be copying this. Just click somewhere to reset a bit. Here we are. Again, sorry, dragging the wrong points. Stop finding that so easy. Come on. Let me do it from down here. There we go. So we're just going to Command D that over. There we go. Let's have a play around with the tuning just in the clip itself. I like it pitched down a little bit. Or up, but not on 0 semitones. It's, from my ear, needs a little repitching. So we can work with it like this. That's definitely very cool and usable. like a beat repeater here just to see what happens if we juggle the pattern a bit. So that could be nice to add a little bit of our own rearrangement of this pattern inside. So this beat repeat. It's now giving some nice variation to that pattern. So perhaps we automate it, switch it on later. Kind of nice idea. Could work quite well. And there's a lot of scope to change this as well from a sound design perspective. Different variation of that loop. So we can consolidate that together. Sound like if we repitch it. Nice. We've opened up space for something else, right? All right, cooking away nicely. So this is the sort of thing that goes on in my processes, right? I'm sharing with you kind of how I produce. I'm trying things out. Sometimes they don't work. I'm thinking like, well, how could I modify that? I've just banked something we were listening to for a long time. Sounds great. Perhaps I reveal that pattern bit further into the track. Now I've got a more simplified version of it, right? I'm kind of always thinking about, you know, creating those sort of things, and I'd go through these loops later or sections and make A, B, C, D, so that we've got this kind of like, what I'm trying to do here is generally create a peak loop, maximum energy, the main core of the song, and then we sort of break it down and build it up. So that would be, you know, a breakdown perhaps section. This would be back at the area where we've got more energy going on. All right, let's have a look at the vocal. There's another vocal snip here that I would use as well. So let's chop that out, drop that up here somewhere. That would be another little vocal piece I would be using. Perhaps not with the other snippets, but at some point.
Love.
So that would be banked for later. Definitely would use that little love part. Again, probably delay it, have a filter that sweeps it around so that it's moving around. Okay, our percussion loop that I had a little earlier that I haven't ended up using. Maybe we can get that in the system. Maybe we can also use it a bit different to how it's used at the moment. Let's loop it up, have a remind ourselves. I guess the main thing, if I wasn't going to do something fancy with it, would be just to take this little kind of fill that happens at the end and actually just use it as that fill, again, sort of somewhere in the groove. Doesn't have to be too often. It is the peak loop. Perhaps it happens a bit more frequently in the peak loop, but even if it's just one every 8 bars, it's a little fill somewhere. So I kind of feel like there's room for maybe a percussion loop here of an actual percussion. So let's have a look. It feels like there's space for a little bit of drum kind of percussion in here. finding what I was looking for there. So let's say we filter it down a bit. And or we do it a different way. Let's go back to kind of where we've been working from and see if we can find it sort of somewhere where we've already been. Okay, so we're inside of this folder previously. This one kind of works again, but we could use just a little snippet of it. But I was kind of looking for another idea. Let's drop it down here. Let's also kind of have a bit of a look. Is there things we can get rid of here? Yeah, I believe these guys can all go now. Not using those. Same with this empty audio track down here. Same with those kind of music loops there. Kind of used those for sampling before. We did have another percussion loop. But it's not really doing anything new. So this would be a classic case, this percussion loop that I've most recently dragged in here. If we zoom it out a little bit and we have a look here, here's the baseline percussion loop. And as you can see, if you look through here, it's almost overlapping all the way through. There are some areas where it doesn't. So again, even though it's not a bass percussion currently, this loop, also with the drum loop at the top, there's a lot of clash. So again, if I was to use that as an audio loop, I'd definitely be in there working on it, trying to get it to fit, you know, in and around what we have. And I've shown you quite a lot of techniques there for sort of getting into the loop, going into the envelopes perhaps, you know, getting into the clip gain, and then making sure that you're only revealing, you know, whatever hits it would be in this loop. There wasn't anything I took away, actually. It was more sort of in this one, but there was another example where I did give an example earlier on where I was doing this kind of thing as well with a baseline alternative loop that we had. So, you know, that's a really massive tip. If you're just using audio loops as they are, have a think about, you know, making sure that the hits that are playing are not going to be playing at the same time, and if they are, make sure they're much higher in pitch and all those kind of things. Another thing we could try actually with this whole loop here, in the same discussion as what I'm talking about, is shift the timing. So if we put that back, so it's one loop, and you see there, I'm moving the whole timing across. Now we can see that we're kind of changing that relationship, and maybe that works. So that's another thing we could try. You've got to obviously pay attention to then the groove that you're creating. For some positions it won't work. That could work. right? So you could fit it in around what you already have. In this case, what I was thinking was finding a nice percussion loop. Not sort of just dragging and dropping a percussion loop in, but as you can see, I'm always thinking about what does it clash with? Can I shift the timing so the beats are not happening at the same time? Can we take away by using the clip gain? Could we go up here and mute notes that are playing at the same time? All of those things are going to make a huge, huge difference to your productions if you pay attention to all those things, of that relationship between all these different parts, right? But what I was sort of more looking for was some kind of like very full percussion loop, which I didn't really find just yet, that I was going to sort of slice up and put into a drum rack. That was kind of what I was thinking to do. Just try again in the packs of Ableton, see if there's anything that crops up. But otherwise, I might head back to my own samples for a second. Let's say sample. Yeah, those are one shot, so let's turn on loop. Yeah, there's not too much, right? Too many options. So in that case, let's just go to something that I know will deliver on that side. And okay. So one thing I want though is actually loop. There we go. Okay. And these are the ones I've added, as I said, because when we go on to Ableton 12, we've got an auto tag happening. So something like this. So let's say directly in the browser here, we just right click on this and we ask slice to a new MIDI rack. It's going to be a lot of slices, 256, which is an awful lot. We'll roll with that. Could have found something else that has less. In fact, it's probably, yeah, it's not even wanting me to accept that because it's just a bit too many. So what we could do actually is just bring it in. We ignore that because it is a big old, long old loop. Now let's just trim it or something like that. So now it's 4 bars. And let's ask our friends Ableton to slice to a new MIDI track. Okay, it's all, yeah, I understand. Okay, I need to crop it first as well. So happened to me a little bit earlier. Just watch out for that as well, because when I was trying out the reverse reverb, that was going on. So let's loop up this area because the sample's a bit too long, right? If we loop that up and then crop it to those 4 bars and then re-loop it, should be a lot less slices now because Ableton only recognizes that it's just that, hopefully. Yep, a lot better, right? So now we can go ahead and do that. Now we've got a drum rack and we've got a MIDI clip that matches that, but we can kind of get rid of that MIDI clip if we like. And let's bring the track up somewhere. And then there's a few ways we could go about this. We could program up a new MIDI clip. So Command Shift M, turn on our preview, go through the slices. Right, and if you're over here looking at the slices as well, you could double click open, and if you see that the slices aren't really where you want them to be, you can adjust them manually here like I'm doing. And you can also write, you know, a name on it. So that could be the cajon, right? And so that when you go back to the piano roll, you will then see that. But I think in this case, another sort of cajon, it's kind of because of the loop being very organically played, some of the slices would need quite a lot of manual adjustment, whereas sometimes when you grab one that's really quantized, you wouldn't need to do as much of that. So that's going to take me a bit more work than I kind of plan to do. So I'll probably leave that for today's video because I'm looking at the clock here. And I was kind of planning to wrap it up now at 5 p.m. for today's stream. Already been in for a couple of hours. So that could be one to pick up and follow on from here. And also, as I said, I could make my life a bit easier by, either quantizing the loop or getting the timing before I sliced it to MIDI, or getting a loop that is not quite so organically played and all the little slices have little pops and clicks and things like that. So let's have a listen to what we've got. I think it's quite a nice little idea. And if we're jamming around with it in the session view, let's have a bit of naming at the top. Just playing around with the bass, just adjusting it. I've moved the pitch slightly. It's fitting a little bit better. What would it sound like if we were DJing this loop a little bit and we cut it with a filter? All right, folks. Well, that's going to be a wrap for this Sunday's live stream in Ableton Live. A little bit of a minimal house, tech house kind of idea, showing you again sort of tips and tricks about how to work with audio, potentially sample packs, if you're not yet, able to program some of these loops, how we can kind of handle them in different ways, make them again our own. Also, how we can make these loops fit together better and be aware of all the overlaps and clashes that are going on inside your track that make your mixes not sound so good, make the elements, one take away a lot from the other. So we've been sort of working on getting this loop to fit together nicely. And what do we have in total tracks? Just 6 at the moment. Does that mean it's weak or strong? You can decide that, but for 6 tracks, I think we've got a nice kind of sounding idea that can go in lots of different directions. And we've sort of banked already some thoughts, particularly with the synth over here. So we've already got an A and a B pattern as well of our kind of melody, let's say. We've got some FX transition sounds ready in the bank to use, perhaps. We've got some, well, we didn't get to the percussion idea, that's for another day. Some little vocal ideas. So this is another version of the Love sample that I've cut out the main spoken word that we've got over here. There's another whole spoken word in here that again I've just stolen. Did I steal it? Not really. Used a little piece out of it just to give us a nice little vocal FX part. So there's lots of material over there as well we could use. Yeah, so I hope that's kind of triggered your imagination and creativity, given you some inspiration. Chavi Diaz, nice deep tech, elegant, groovy. I love. Thank you very much. Appreciate your comment. Great to have you with you, my friend. So on that note, of course, I will put a video here at the end that I would suggest is a good one to watch if you're reached the end here and you're thinking, what should I watch next on Heath's channel? I did one recently, which was getting creative with sample packs. So that's probably a good one, again, that will tie in a lot to what you saw here today. And hopefully you can see as well, music doesn't have to be complicated. Doesn't mean it's better if we played everything on the keyboard. It's about sort of creativity, imagination, and wanting to kind of, I think, get these sounds and turn them into something that belongs to you. It only exists in your computer. That's the sort of end goal here, and that's what I've been sort of trying to demonstrate here. Next couple of weekends, must point out on the Sundays, I'm going to be very, very busy, but I will definitely try and find a live stream. But just to let you know, it may be a slightly different time change. I haven't quite figured that out yet, but I do plan to try and not have a break. So do keep tuned for that as well. I do schedule them in advance. So if you've got any comments, if you're watching this back on replay, drop them in the comments. Give the video a thumbs up if you did enjoy it. Consider subscribing to the channel. Take care. Have a great weekend. The rest of your Sunday, enjoy it. The scary Sundays. And see you again soon. Happy music making. And bye for now. Ciao. Thank you. Ciao.